All right, you guys, good morning. We're going to get into some Middle East updates as well as some headlines today. Lots of changes going on in the matrix. So at this point, there's no other conclusion that you can come to about what's going on in the Middle East based on, the escalation of what kinds of targets are being hit by the US and Israel, and then Iran's reciprocal response to this targeting. There's no other conclusion that you could come to other than that the intent is self-destruction of the infrastructure of the Middle East. It's a controlled demolition of sorts, is what it seems. And essentially, there are only two possible outcomes. Either the US is trying to force some kind of nuclear holocaust or nuclear exchange, or they're intentionally imploding the petrodollar. Why else would the infrastructure, gas and oil, be targeted? They know what Iran's strategy is. The strategy is Iran reciprocates blow for blow with the types of infrastructure. So why would we continue to target their infrastructure knowing that they're going to just blow everything up? Now, of course, the end result would be either a worldwide digital currency, which we all knew was coming, or a shift of world power to China and the yuan. Now, in the latest strikes, Trump has bragged about this bridge that he took out. And it's crazy because we were just talking about bridges being taken out in iPetCo 2. Apparently, this bridge was hit. It's interesting how they hit the bridge, right? That's kind of a weird place to target a bridge. I think they target it like maybe closer to one of these one of these uprights here, but apparently they hit the middle of the bridge, which could probably be repaired. But take a look at this from iPetCo 2. Now this is not the same bridge that we thought that this might be, but it's a similar type of bridge in iPetCo 2. And there was a bombing, not the bridge in iPetCo 2, but this mosque, and this whirling dervish boy comes up out of the top of the dome of that mosque. Very strange how life imitates art in this 2012 animation once again. Now, I wanted to take a minute to highlight a comment. This was actually a really good comment by Kathleen McFarland, and her opinion really is shared by most center-right Christians in America who don't understand the history of Iran and how we got to this point and why they make so many threats. So I want to read her comment, then I'm going to read my response to her comment, because this is important to understand. A lot of us conservatives are in the dark when it comes to the history of Iran because our propaganda here in the US tries to pick up at the hostage crisis that happened. That's where they want to start the history. But the history actually goes a little bit further back than that and gives us a reason as to why Iran feels the way it does, why they keep chanting death to America. It goes a very long way. Now, let me check in with you guys. We'll get into this comment and my response. Good morning, everybody. You guys aren't hearing anything? Some people aren't hearing anything. Let's make sure we have sound. Appears as though I have sound on my end. Somebody probably needs to refresh. So, Rebecca, please instruct that person to refresh. Are you guys getting sound? YouTube's been acting very weird. Thank you, Insightful Sojourner, the sound check. Yeah, YouTube's been acting weird over the last couple days, and we probably know why. A lot of information's coming out with the updates on the war. It's not going as planned, and a lot of backpedaling on Trump's end, and his dismal address the other night, as well as there was a different, presentation that he gave, and the White House actually removed it. We're going to get into that today, where he says essentially that the war is more important than Medicaid and Medicare. He says we can't afford it. He says it's not possible. So it's like he's intentionally imploding our economy. We'll get into that story a little bit later today, but I want to stay on track here. So Kathleen says, But what about them for years to date, saying death to America, and the illegal Muslims in the US trying to take over and push Sharia law? And what about the Iranian leaders killing 30,000 of their own citizens, peacefully protesting, and Christians? What about that? I give a buzzer X to your take. So I appreciate that comment, even though you don't agree. But here's the response, Kathleen, and this will help other people to understand what is going on here. I said, thanks for your opinion. Here is the history of why they say death to America, and then I will address your other points. So this is straight up history. You can literally, I got this right out of the history books and, online, of course. So in other words, even if they were trying to hide this history, they haven't been doing it because it's the truth. You can't hide from the truth, right? These are historical facts. On August 19th, 1953, this goes back a very, very long time. The CIA, Operation Ajax, and British intelligence, Operation Boot, orchestrated a coup that overthrew Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. So they had a democratic election, and it was overthrown by our government and the Brits. Let's keep reading. Motivated by Mossadegh's 1951 nationalization of British-controlled oil industry. So Britain controlled Iran in 1951, and Mossadegh was democratically elected to nationalize their oil. In other words, take back their own oil and their own country. Does all this sound familiar? Because it's exactly what happened in Venezuela. The coup restored absolute power to Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. So this is the puppet that we put in place, securing Western control over Iranian oil and making Iran a key Cold War ally. So that's what we did. Now, if someone came to our country and did that, took over our resources, stole your land that you paid for, and your oil, you would probably be saying death to Russia or death to whoever country did that to us as well, wouldn't you? Now, it doesn't stop there. Shah Mohammad Reza, now this is the guy who we put in as a puppet, was ousted by the 1979 Islamic Revolution due to widespread discontent over his autocratic rule. Yeah, people were upset. They're like, this is a U.S. puppet. Repression by his Savik secret police and forced westernization. He fled Iran on January 16, 1979, ending the Pahlavi dynasty. Then, in the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, the U.S. tilted towards Saddam Hussein's Iraq. So he was our puppet. And then in the 1980s, treated it as a strategic counterweight to block the spread of 1979 Iranian Revolution. So in other words, we funded Saddam Hussein to counter the revolution because we wanted to maintain power and control over Iran. The U.S. provided Iraq with intelligence, economic aid, dual-use technology, and special operations training, while officially remaining neutral and later engaging in the Iran-Contra scandal, where it secretly sold weapons to Iran. So we first stole their oil, then controlled their election, then waged a war against them through Iraq to try to regain control of their oil. This is why they chant death to America. And we would be chanting the same thing if another country did this to us. And then I say to your other points, it is up to our leaders, Trump included, to deport any immigrants, legal or not, who are trying to influence American laws contrary to our Constitution. Green cards can be revoked at any time, and Trump should absolutely do that. And I'm saying that in response to the illegal Muslims in the U.S. trying to take over and push Sharia law. So hopefully I addressed all of Kathleen's points. The problem is our presence in the Middle East and the long, long line of interference, all the bases surrounding Iran, as well as millions killed in wars, if you add up Afghanistan, Iraq, and everything else. So that is the true history. Now, if you just jump into the timeline and you want to only look at the Americans killed, on the USS Cole, or if you only want to look at the kidnapped, Americans, then you're going to miss the point. You're going to think that Iran is evil and they brought this all on themselves. But that's not how history goes. Now, as you can see, all of our bases in the countless proxy wars that we have waged against Libya, Iraq, Egypt, Syria, etc., they are seen by the people in the region as a kind of occupation. Foreigners in their land. So that's the truth. Now, what about the nuclear threat? I want to talk a little bit about that. Okay, because I had to look this up because I wasn't sure about what was going on. Now, the reason that we are told that we went into Iran was because of the threat of a nuclear weapon. So, how much uranium does Iran have? Well, according to what we know, let's see, it's about 60 kilograms, I think. Let's take a look here. 440 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. Now, I had to copy and paste this because the AI is self-learning. So if you start digging in the wrong places and the page refreshes in the browser, it will literally change the answer. So I copied and pasted, and I asked the question, could Iran make a truck nuke? At first I asked if it could make a backpack nuke. Probably not feasible because of the trigger mechanism would be huge, would not fit on someone's back, but it would fit inside of a truck. The reason why I asked this question is because I was like, wait a minute. If they've got 441 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, and weapons grade is typically defined at 90%, but 60% is technically sufficient to create a nuclear explosion, they could have already made a truck nuke a decade ago if their goal was really to destroy thousands of people. So we are making empty accusations. Let's read through some of this because this is interesting. I asked, could Iran make a truck nuke with the uranium it already has? As of April 2026, nuclear experts and international agencies indicate that Iran theoretically has enough enriched uranium to construct several crude nuclear devices, though it lacks certain technical capabilities for a deliverable weapon. Now that right there makes it sound like they can't do it, but listen to this. Iran possesses 441 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. While weapons grade is typically defined at 90%, 60% is technically sufficient to create a nuclear explosion, albeit a lower yield. Weapon potential. This 60% stockpile is enough to fuel approximately 10 to 12 nuclear weapons if further enriched to 90%, but that's not our question, is it? Feasibility of a truck nuke is what we're looking for. If Iran chooses to build a weapon using only its current 60% enriched material, the resulting device would likely be a gun type or unoptimized implosion design. Such a device would be too large and heavy for a missile, but could potentially fit on the back of a truck or inside the back of a truck that nobody would know. That they could have, if they wanted to, drive into a very crowded area and kill thousands of people. They could have already done this a long time ago. And look at where things are now. They've been attacked. Again, they could be doing this right now, but they're choosing not to because that was never the goal. Let's keep reading here. A device using 60% enriched uranium would produce a smaller nuclear yield, 3 kilotons, compared to standard 90% weapons, but would still be thousands of times more powerful than conventional explosives. Technical barriers. To create any bomb, Iran must still convert its uranium from a gas into a solid metal, process that requires specialized facilities, heavily damaged in the 2025 airstrikes. See how it's admitting it, but kind of not? It's giving you that little bit of questioning of it, isn't it? Wow. Now, what else is going on? Well, this is interesting. One of you asked about gas prices, why our gas prices are going up if we are the world's largest producer of gas and oil. Well, here's what they say. Gas prices in America rise despite high domestic production because oil is a globally traded commodity. While the U.S. produces significant oil, prices are set by international supply and demand, meaning geopolitical conflicts, such as those in the Middle East, drive up the global cost of crude oil, which accounts for roughly half of the price at the pump. So this is why our gas prices are going up, because it's a globally traded commodity. And Trump knows this, which is why it doesn't really matter how much oil we produce. And so he's being insincere when he says that, like, oh, we don't give a care if the strait opens or not. But he actually should, unless he's intentionally trying to implode the petrodollar, which I believe is what's happening now. This is going to really piss some people off and also put things in perspective for you about how much we are getting screwed in America. As of early 2026, gasoline in Iran remains among the cheapest in the world, often costing well under 50 cents a gallon. Yes, the people in Iran are paying 50 cents or less per gallon for gas. Oh, that's because they produce a lot of oil, Casey. Well, we are now the number one producer in the world. Why isn't our gas under 50 cents a gallon? Because they're making a killing off of us. Now, even 50 cents per gallon that's, I guess in Venezuela, it's actually much cheaper. So they're paying a little bit more than Venezuela is. But do you notice the trend here? Countries that are actually giving fuel to their citizens at a fair price, and we hate that for some reason here in America. We hate that, and I'm talking about our government. Our government can't allow that to happen. Do you see the problem here? There's something else going on here. But yet we complain, we say, oh, the people of Iran hate their government. Well, guess what? Here in America, when gas prices are low, that'll get you elected as president, right? Wow. Let me check in with you guys now. The world's 40 countries of the world have now convened in a virtual conference to see how they can get the Strait of Hormuz opened. Let's go read that article. Gosh, can you imagine 50 cents a gallon for gas? That would be amazing. The UK gathers more than 40 countries to press Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Let's see what this guy has to say here.
Persian Gulf, and a trade route between the Middle East and the rest of the world that has global impact. The strait lies between Iran on one side and Arab Gulf states on the other, the latter of which includes several key US allies. At its narrowest point, it separates Oman and Iran by just 21 miles. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, and from there, ships travel to the open ocean. While Iran and Oman both have their territorial waters in the strait, it's generally viewed as an international waterway. The strait links crude oil producers in the Middle East to key markets in Asia, Europe, North America and beyond. Around 20% of the...
Okay, we already know all that. So, let's see here. Let's read this article. Now, as we speak, I'm getting messages on my phone. Apparently, Iran has hit Gulf refineries, and that's in response to their refinery being hit. So more oil and gas infrastructure is being destroyed. This takes decades to rebuild. This means the cost of energy for anyone that any of these refineries connected to countries that are normally serviced by those refineries, their gas and oil prices are going to go through the roof. And it's also, as we discussed, going to affect the price because it's a globally traded commodity. So it will affect us as well. So prepare for much higher prices and everything. But let's read this article here. Britain accused Iran on Thursday of holding the world's economy hostage as diplomats from more than 40 countries held talks on ways to press Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil route that has been choked off by the U.S.-Israel war against Iran. The U.S. didn't attend the virtual meeting, which came after U.S. President Trump made clear that he thinks securing the waterway is not America's job. Again, remember, we came in, we broke all the toys, and then we just pretend like nothing happened. Trump has also disparaged American and European allies for failing to support the war and renewed his threats to pull the U.S. out of NATO. UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper said the talks, which focused on political and diplomatic rather than military means, showed the strength of our international determination to reopen the strait. The 41 countries represented came from all continents except Antarctica, a reflection of the global tremors from a war that has sparked shortages of fuel and fertilizer and higher prices for food far beyond the Middle East. Now, 60% of the world's fertilizer goes through the Strait of Hormuz as well, so that people are anticipating food shortages in the near future without fertilizer because our food systems are based off of this fertilizer. We have seen Iran hijack an international shipping route to hold the global economy hostage. The way this should read is the United States started a war with Iran to destabilize the international shipping route. Now, here's my guess. They're talking tough here, but at the end of the day, if I was a betting man, I would think that these countries are likely to get in contact with Iran to negotiate safe passage of their ships. Iran might counter-negotiate and ask them to trade in yuan to gain safe passage, and this will shift everything away from the petrodollar. If all of these countries shift to the yuan, that's the end of the petrodollar, and life will change in America. And I believe this is all coordinated. It's all intentional because Trump is a giant child, and he was pretty much brought in to self-destruct the petrodollar, is what I believe is happening here. Now, Trump just fired Pam Bondi. Also, the top guy in the army was fired as well. We saw these firings happen just before the Venezuela operation, so I'm wondering if these shifts are being done to align, our military with Trump's wishes and desires so that he can finish the job, as he says. But look at this. Pam Bondi got fired. This was just yesterday, right before she was going to be forced to testify about the Epstein files. Now, in a normal world, a person like this would be indicted for breaking the law, for not releasing the files. But in clown world, Trump would just pardon her if she did get indicted, because she was hired, in my opinion, specifically because Trump probably had dirt on her in the Epstein files as well. She was the attorney general in Florida when all this was going down, so she must have known about Epstein. She must have. And in her position, and to overlook that, she's just as culpable. So he hired her specifically to cover up the files. He knew she had skin in the game and that she would need to cover her own sins. And then he would just fire her. She'd be protected by a Trump pardon. She'd be off the chessboard. Mission accomplished. That's what I believe is really going on here. Wow. U.S. President Trump has removed Attorney General Pam Bondi from her post. White House officials said on Thursday, following mounting frustration with her performance, including her handling of investigative files related to the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. Now, don't take the bait on that. They're trying to make it look like, oh, no, she was doing Trump's bidding. Her job was to cover the files, and she did it. Now they're just removing her from the board. That way she stops getting heat, and nobody knows where to go to place the blame on all this. Wow. So, what else is going on, you guys? Well, things are changing in Venezuela. U.S. lifts sanctions on Venezuela's acting president, opening the door for assets control. It's interesting because this woman's always wearing this green color, isn't she? And we compared her to the girl in I Pet Goat 2, which had also the green eyeshadow. So weird. Let's see if we can look that up. So here's the Heliofant website. These are images from a video that they uploaded to their channel, their YouTube channel. This was several months ago of an icy landscape up in Canada. But let's take a look here. The gallery. So now they call this girl Sun Tzu. Notice the green eyeshadow. She's also got a tiger on her back. And Maduro called her the Tiger of Venezuela. They're also going through a giant carcass. You can see the ribs here in the background. And the carcass is Caracas, Venezuela. She waves the white flag, and that's exactly what she did in real life. She waved the white flag and let the U.S. take control of the country. And so that's where we are with that. Wow. Let's read about this. U.S. on Wednesday removed sanctions against Venezuela. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez, according to the Treasury Department website, less than 3 months after U.S. forces seized the country's then president, Nicolas Maduro, in a raid on the capital. Trump administration is closely engaged with the interim government led by Rodriguez, sending U.S. Energy and Interior Secretaries on visits to Caracas with potential investors, making an agreement for the U.S. to sell Venezuelan oil, praising changes to the oil and mining sectors that are meant to attract foreign capital, and issuing sanctions waivers. So, Washington in March formally recognized Rodriguez as Venezuela's leader, opening the door for her government to reopen embassies and consulates in the U.S. and regain control of Venezuela-owned companies abroad. Rodriguez hailed the decision, saying in a post on X that it was a step in the direction of normalizing and strengthening relations between our countries. We trust that this progress will allow for the lifting of the sanctions currently in place in our country, enabling the building and guaranteeing of an effective bilateral cooperation agenda for the benefit of our peoples. The announcement of the sanctions removal came after Reuters reported earlier on Wednesday that Rodriguez's administration is getting ready to take over the boards of state oil for PDVSA's U.S. subsidiaries, including Citgo Petroleum, citing 4 sources close to the preparations. Now, to put things in perspective as well, a lot of the justification that the U.S. has had in these interventions is national security, right? Venezuela was being influenced by China and Russia, and Iran, the same story. And in Iran's case, it goes all the way back to the Cold War. I'm not sure the history of Venezuela and if their situation went all the way back to the Cold War, but at some point, the nationalization of their oil, and it seemed to coincide with these ties to Russia and China. That's the excuse that we're given as to why these countries had to be dealt with by the United States. But at a certain point, aggression breeds aggression. And countries need to come to terms with the fact that if you just keep aggressing on other countries and jockeying for position and resources, then the war never ends. It just keeps going and going and going. People should just be in their own hemisphere, deal with their own issues and problems, and not be projecting outwards, because that is a losing game, isn't it? Now, here are some updates over the last 24 hours of what's going on in Europe as they've closed their airspace and blocked the United States from utilizing their bases in Europe to aggress on Iran. I thought this was a very good summary of what's going on. In case you didn't know, these are our NATO allies. Remember, France blocked U.S. military overflight for weapons to Israel, first time since the war began in February 28th. Israel cut all defense procurement from France. Italy denied Sigonella Air Base landing to U.S. bombers. Defense minister said relations are solid and loyal days after blocking U.S. planes. Spain closed their entire airspace to U.S. operations, blocked Naval Station Rota and Morón Air Base. Prime Minister Sanchez called it not NATO collective defense. Poland refused to redeploy Patriot batteries. U.S. burned through 1,200 interceptors in 16 days. Poland said no. Switzerland denied 2 U.S. reconnaissance flights, suspended $120 million in weapons exports under neutrality laws. The UK. The PM said, "This is not our war." Trump told them to build up some delayed courage. Germany. President Steinmeier called war possibly illegal while hosting Ramstein, largest U.S. base outside America. So, France, Italy, Spain, Poland, Switzerland, UK, and Germany in 1 week. They're basically putting a stop to what Trump's doing. So, when Trump gets up there and says everything's going great, they're lying to us. That's not... Typically, you'd need at least air support. You need to be able to fly over and use the bases in the region to support the war, and but many of the allies, the large ones in Europe, are not offering military support. Wow. Now, here's the latest. 13 hours ago, this just broke. U.S. intelligence assesses Iran maintains significant missile launching capabilities. So, Trump said 90%, 95%, 99% depleted. Iran has no capabilities. Remember, we heard this after the first week. And here we are, 4 weeks, almost 5 weeks. And the real intelligence says, no, they've got plenty of stuff. And we were telling you this. Of course, no one's going to believe a YouTube channel. But I already told you this. I said, there's no way they're going to get all this stuff. It's like flying a kite over a football field. You can't cover it all. And now they're confirming this. And all it takes is some critical thinking to understand the region. It says roughly half of Iran's missile launchers are still intact, and thousands of one-way attack drones remain in Iran's arsenal despite the daily pounding by U.S. and Israeli strikes against military targets over the past 5 weeks. According to recent U.S. intelligence assessments, 3 sources familiar with intel told CNN, they're still very much poised to wreak absolute havoc throughout the entire region. U.S. intelligence assessment total may include launchers that are currently inaccessible, such as those buried underground by strikes not destroyed. Thousands of Iranian drones still exist, roughly 50% of the country's drone capability. 50%. The intelligence compiled in recent days also shows a large percentage of Iran's coastal defense cruise missiles were intact. So, we're being lied to. We are being lied to. We also are probably being lied to about how many of our brave men and women and their lives have been taken. It'll all come out eventually, but it will be too late. Now, what I'm going to show you next, this is actually Trump's remarks that were actually removed by the White House. Trump did some kind of press conference, and in the press conference, he said, "It is not possible for the U.S. to pay for Medicaid, Medicare, and daycare. We're fighting wars." They then removed it. Let's read this, and I'll be back in the chat. President Donald Trump on Wednesday said it's not possible for the federal government to fund Medicare, Medicaid, and child care costs, arguing that it should be up to the states to take care of those programs, while the federal government focuses on military spending. The president's remarks were delivered to attendees at a private Easter luncheon at the White House, where Trump also accused Democratic-led states of fraud. He went on to say that he told Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought, "Don't send any money for daycare because the United States can't take care of daycare. That has to be up to a state. We can't take care of daycare. We're a big country. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. You got to let a state take care of daycare, and they should pay for it too. Later in his remarks, the president added that states would have to raise their taxes to pay for child care costs, and that the federal government could lower our taxes a little bit to help them to make up for it. Then he says, it's not possible for us to take care of daycare, Medicaid, Medicare, all those individual things, Trump said. They can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing, military protection. We have to guard the country. Now here's the thing. The reason why we're having to guard the country is because we've been aggressing on all these other nations. I've never seen a president do this before. Threaten an entire world. Threatening Greenland, threatening South America, Central America. And he's always got an excuse to do it. Now in the Middle East. The Easter luncheon where the president made these remarks was not open to the press, but the White House posted the video of Trump's remarks on its YouTube page, as it usually does with open press events, and then deleted it. Wow. So, those are the updates that I could find. It doesn't cover everything that went down over the last 24 hours, but definitely a lot of what was going on. You guys, we've got 3 more years of this. It's unbelievable. How much more of this can we take? How much more of this can we take? So, Jesus Christ is King. Amen. Biff Tannen, The Nightmare Clown Show. Oh, can you guys hear the birds in the background? I got the window open here. It's a beautiful morning. Don Jr. and Eric Jr. are training with SEAL Team 6 to help baby Jesus in the bunny war. Barron did 12 push-ups for his dad. That's pretty funny. Could Trump run another term? That's possible. He can do whatever he wants now. He has complete control of the government. He might try. Okay. All right, you guys, I'm going to pop off of here. You guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in. Take care, everybody.